Can people hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Ah, great.
Yes.
All right, so before we get started officially, hi, Daniel Bonilla. I'm used to talking to you in a very different context.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. Let
You
me
froze.
Just give me a second to get work.
Is it just me or her connection's freezing, right?
Correct. She's
All right,
having some
let me
kind of
just give me a
internet
second to get work.
troubles.
Okay.
Yeah, and her sound wasn't too good either. Eventually, she will be with us more perfectly, one would hope.
Sweet.
Okay. Right. Since I am having so many issues, I've relocated, so hopefully that's a little bit better. But Leo, if you can kind of keep an eye, if I disappear, just take over and I shall return. It is 7:08. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It looks like we have, thank you, Chanel, a quorum. So I just want to introduce the members of the committee who are here tonight. My name is Debbie Nabavian. I'm Chair of Traffic and Transportation for CB12. This is our June 7th meeting, last meeting before the summer break. We have Mary Anderson, Jim Berlin, Bruce Robertson, Omar Tejada, Jay Mazer, and Leo Jimenez, the Assistant Chair of the committee. Here, as well as CB12 board member Sally Fisher. And I want to say a big welcome back to Omar. We missed you. Glad to see you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Feels good to have you back. Richard Allman is traveling, so he won't be joining us tonight. And let me just see if we have anybody that needs to be promoted. Okay. All right. Great big. You know, Chanel, why don't we, I'm just anticipating what's to come, but can you promote Victor Santos just in case, just in preparation for our first agenda item? Hey, Gerard.
Hey, how you doing?
And that's Gerard Dingle, another member of the committee. Okay, so before we get started with our agenda, I just wanted to give an update on the 181st Street busway. And if Kimberly Rancourt wants to chime in after I say what I know, feel free. So the busway launched on 181st Street. I've not received really any feedback except from very afar. So I guess the tidbit that I have heard, again, from afar, is that, you know, from the MTA standpoint that, you know, buses are moving. So that was, you know, obviously one of the biggest objectives was getting the tens and tens and tens of thousands of people who move across the corridor moving. But, you know, based on, you know, I think Ebenezer's update at the general meeting, it appears that there has been some feedback. It hasn't gotten as far as this committee, but we're from the business community. And I think one of the issues is that you know, it takes a while, obviously, to figure out like what you can do and what you can't do. And from if you're coming from this way and you can do that, but if you're coming from that way, you can't do that. But, you know, one thing I noticed on day one was that, you know, people are allowed to travel on the busway for a block before they need to make a right turn off the corridor. And I think that Ebenezer and Eli had raised some issues about like, is that signed appropriately? Because sometimes the police didn't know all the ins and outs when they were there on hand in the beginning. And I think as we enter this next phase where people are getting warnings, but not yet getting fines, I think Ebenezer's emphasis was on let's make sure that the signage is doing what it needs to do, which is giving people the information of what they can and can't do. So for example, if you're coming east on 181st Street and you get to Broadway, it's not like quickly clear that you can keep going straight. You just need to turn off, you know, at your next opportunity, which I guess would be Wadsworth. Anyway, so I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, as far as what's gotten to me, I've not really heard that much. And what I've heard is somewhat anecdotal and somewhat based on Ebenezer's update at the general meeting. Kimberly, is there anything that you can say yet about how things are operating or what you're seeing in these first moments of the busway? And unmute, sorry.
I think that in the early days we've seen and we've heard from some folks, there was when PD was out there in force, there were some issues with them not letting folks onto the street as they were allowed to do. And that has happened in other busways, and it is a challenge of coordination and making sure that it's not always intuitive at the beginning. So it's a learning process. Now that we have the cameras giving warnings, that will help alleviate that problem of people are not able to access where they should be able to access. And so we haven't heard anything recent about that. We've seen improvements in bus speeds. I asked our team for some updates on that today. You know, it's really early to say, but you know, in general, ranging, if I include what they shared like throughout the day, from like basically 10 to 30%, depending on the day and depending on the time of day, increases in speeds. And overall, we haven't seen major impacts on travel times on the surrounding streets. There are some areas that do seem like they're getting a little bit more congested. So we'll keep an eye specifically, and we'll keep monitoring everything, but specifically paying attention to those locations. And please give us feedback. You know, like I think we need to have people who are up there all the time sharing with us what they're seeing on the ground. And the warning period started May 17th, I believe. So there's about just over another month of that before actual fines are issued. And we did, Borough Commissioner Pinkar did also do a walkthrough with Eli and Ebenezer, and they did call out the signage. So we are reviewing that as well as to see if there's any changes we can make to help make it a little more clear in some cases. But just for your example, that Broadway onto eastbound, 181st eastbound past Broadway is the one location where you actually can't continue onto 181st. The one place, that one block, just so that.
Really?
That's the one place where you can't turn onto that block because there's only bus stops, because there's no like small businesses or anything like that. So that's the one location.
No, I'm saying if you're going straight, you can't go straight onto the busway. You can't continue straight at 181st Street.
Correct.
Really?
That's the only block, that eastbound section between Broadway and Wadsworth is the only place where you can't access that one part of the curb.
It might be simpler if, you know, the rules were consistent for people.
They are,
I mean,
consistent.
I remember that you couldn't take the turn, you know, where the buses were making the right turn, but if you're just going straight, like I didn't remember that, but so that was that was in the plan?
The whole curb is just a bus stop that was pre-existing in that way. So that's why it's designed that way, is what I understand. But yeah, that's in all of our materials, and everything that is explained both on the map and in the like, narrative Q&A sections of our brochure and all.
Huh.
If that's not
Yeah,
signed clearly,
That's really, yeah, because that's, yeah, like there's a lot of congestion there. Okay, so when is the time, because I know it's sort of viewed as a 1 year sort of pilot, but when do you think you'll be able to come to the committee with like this is how it's going and here's some harder data?
I think it's reasonable to come in the fall. I think we probably would want to wait until after summer, like to have a little bit of data early in the fall, because we know the traffic patterns change from summer to fall. So I would say later in the fall would probably be the best time, but we can follow up on that. I mean, if there's anything, please give us feedback, even if we're not here, send it to our office. And if there's issues, please let us know. But as far as like a kind of more formal update on data, I think that probably makes the most sense, but I'll check in with our team.
All right, so we'll sort of think of it as November-ish.
I think so.
November-ish. Okay. All right. So with that,
And
we'll,
like a 6-month point too. So
yeah. Okay. So with that, and then we'll sort of circle back on some old business items and new business stuff at the end, which I think everything is DOT. This is DOT night once again. But I want to hand it off to the DOT team. Hi, Irene, as well, for the presentation of the Dyckman Plaza. And you just let me know if anybody else needs to be promoted.
I think it's just Serena.
Hi, how are you? Good evening. I need
Good.
to share my screen. So if someone can allow me to do that, that would be fantastic. There you go. Beautiful. We got it.
There you go.
Okay, hello everyone. Super excited to be back here, reporting back on our community engagement and also on design development. So just a quick introduction for those that haven't met me before. I am Irene Figueroa Ortiz, Senior Project Manager for DOT Public Space. DOT Public Space is the arm of DOT that is designing, planning, and implementing all our public space programs. So that goes from open streets all the way from like the PLAZA program, which I'm going to be specifically speaking about today. So we have been heavily involved with all the retrofitting of streets so to support recovery over the past year. And then today specifically, I'm going to be talking about one of those projects that went from pandemic recovery to PLAZA or to a permanent public space, or is trying to, right, aspiring to become. So its location is Dyckman Street, is Dyckman between Seaman Avenue and Broadway. And we got a PLAZA program application last year. So you are quite familiar with it, but I'm going to still go over this, right? It became part of the Open Streets program last year in May when the program was launched. Then we developed this new program that was called Open Streets Restaurant, or still is, which is all about supporting restaurant operations on the street. And the location became part of that program last year as well in the summer. It's right now one of those locations that has been, we would say one of the most well used and actively managed. So it seems like a good location to start thinking about maybe the future and how it could look like a public space that is going beyond supporting recovery and supporting restaurant operations. So last year in November, we got this PLAZA program application from Dyckman Gardens. This is the group that has been managing the open street over the past year. So as usual, when we have a PLAZA program application and we accept it to the program, what that does is it starts this planning process from beginning to end to understand the feasibility of the location and to see how it can become part of the program. And what we have been doing over the past couple months is building off the success of that open street to pave the way for a more permanent public space. Quick overview of our community partner. So Dyckman Gardens Corporation, they are a group of local businesses that got together to create this nonprofit that has been just managing the open street, making sure that it's clean, planting the planters that look really nice during the summer, and just making sure that the space is well used. They want to continue to play that role in the future, but with a public space, right? With this space that is fully open to the community, and it's just like becomes a space that can be also programmed by the community. And then I believe Victor was promoted, so you maybe hear from him, but we have Victor Santos here from Dykeman Gardens, who may be at the end sharing a few words about their plans for the summer. But also like talking about community support. When we get a PLAZA application, one of the things that we try to make sure is that there is community support for the project. So we ask for letters of support. And for this specific project, we got letters of support from all the individuals, offices, entities, businesses that you see listed on the slide right now. So these are the people that have been speaking in support of the project. So quick overview of what the PLAZA program is and what is not. So PLAZA program is all about introducing public space by transforming underused roadway. So roadway that is no longer really serving the purpose that was originally intended for it is transformed into a pedestrian priority zone. It's slightly different from parks, right? Because parks, like our plazas, are really embedded in the urban fabric, so are adjacent to transit, adjacent to businesses. So the way their ultimate goal is to enhance urban life and to really support all the land uses around them. If this location becomes part of the PLAZA program, it will be part of our cohort of plazas. We have 66 plazas that are currently open to the public. 3 of them are located in your district. For example, Plaza de las Americas is one of them. And this is one that went from its pop-up, like all the way from, like, we have 3 stages for our project. So it's a pop-up plaza, an interim plaza, and a capital plaza. This one is a capital plaza. Our goal for Dykeman is to create and install an interim plaza and then eventually see if it makes sense to move to a capital plaza. Part of being in the program and being a community partner is to make sure that the space functions well at all times. So maintenance responsibilities are a key part of what the maintenance and community partner it's fulfilling as their role. And we provide support and come up with a plan with them to make sure that this is happening long-term and effectively. And so far, we heard great things through the community outreach process about the work that Dykeman Gardens have been doing on maintenance. So I'm excited about that one. Like, I feel like it will be great for this. And then the other piece that comes with a plaza is programming. We always work with our partners to make sure that this space is programmed regularly. It doesn't mean that programming is only going to be happening through the partner or is going to be facilitated by the partner. It's just making sure that there's something happening every so often, and that's what the partner helps us to come up with and making sure that it continues to happen. However, once a space becomes part of the plaza program, it becomes an official plaza, it enters the SAPO permit. The SAPO, like the Street Activity Permit Office list of programmable spaces. So any organization in the community can request to use the space for some programming. It has to be public. It has to be something that serves the community, but it's something that at the end, the space is for everyone. So a part of making sure that maintenance works well and that we can have a space that can be programmed well is to addressing quality of life issues. So that's the reason why all our plazas have, all our plazas have a set of rules and regulations that are part of the administrative code that are also enforceable by the NYPD to make sure that we are creating an environment of respect and that we're addressing any quality of life issues in the plaza. We put up signage with these rules as part of our construction process. So it's just another layer that comes with having a public plaza, and it's something that will be part of Dyckman Plaza if we were to, implement the project. So planning, let's go into planning process. So for this specific project, we had 3 community engagement efforts. The first one, last time I was here, I talked more in depth about that one, which was the online survey. It was in April, and we gathered 565 responses for that one. Then we went back in May, had an in-person workshop, and then also had a virtual design workshop. The goal of this was always to gather as much feedback as we could about people's experiences using the space and allow for that input to inform street design. So quick overview of the online survey. Majority of the respondents were residents. The open street in Dyckman has become part of the community public spaces. People are using it regularly. The majority of the respondents were in support of pedestrianizing that open street. And then when we were asking people to tell us about how they were using the space and how they aspire to use the space, we identify discrepancy between what was happening in the space and what they wanted to be doing in the space around cultural and recreational programming, which for us indicates that people really want to be using the space as a space for cultural activities and recreation. So like that was part then later of our community outreach process. When we had the workshops, we were specifically asking about that to try to understand what they wanted to see in the space. So this is the workshop. So that was me and Kimberly we were out there. That was in May. This photo was taken on a Saturday. So there's 2 photos. So we were out there. It was like both events were fully bilingual. We had also outreach material that was bilingual. I would say that the in-person workshop was really amazing, like the energy of just being able to meet people on the street. It was just like really great after not seeing people for a long time right out there. So we had a map, and we allowed for people to like draw on the map and put stickers and add comments. And that was a really great way to really having a conversation. So let me go over what we learned from those conversations. The top safety concerns or concerns that we heard were around the safety and quality of life issues associated with the dirt bikes in the drag racing in the area, speeding of vehicles, double parking or illegal parking in the intersections. There were concerns over long-term privatization of the public space. And also we heard a lot of concerns about noise from different sources, right? We were trying to map out where exactly the noise was coming or these concerns were coming. Then we also heard really great ideas about how to transform the space into a plaza. That was really well received, the idea of having a plaza, specifically when we said that it was public. So it was a really great reception. And we got a lot of comments about extending the 2-way bike lane through the public space. Most of the comments were around bike infrastructure and making sure that that is preserved. We also heard a lot of great feedback around the idea of creating a connection to the Greenway and to making sure in the future to really think about either creating a bike boulevard or a pedestrian boulevard from that location all the way to the waterfront, which we thought it was a really like visionary idea. But there were requests to really have a larger vision for Dyckman as a street, not only that portion. And then, as I was saying before, we heard really positive reviews of Dyckman Gardens' abilities to maintain the space through an open street, and that was really exciting to hear. And then we were asking people to provide ideas on like just proposed improvements. The top ones were protected bike lanes, either 1-way or 2-way. We had a lot of requests about like bike infrastructure. People wanted to see planters and greening. They like that about the current open street because they're really nice flowers. So they really wanted to make sure to see more of that there. They asked for a lot of more like public seating spaces where people can sit, even if they're not eating in the restaurants, for example. public art, and also just safety at the intersections. So because they don't feel like they're the safest. And then programming ideas. I think if I have to think about one sentence for those ideas was multicultural programming. So a lot of like just bringing together a community and the different cultures together. So also family-oriented programming was something that was brought up again and again. And they just like music and theater and just cultural programming around the arts was also something that was brought up again and again. Okay, so PLAZA proposal. So once we went through a process and we spoke with people and we did our physical assessments of the space, we came up with a proposal that we're going to share today, right? So I want to go over the concept and the major challenges that we have to address with the design. So this is the existing design or of the street design of the block. What you have right now is the parking, and then you have a shared bike lane that is going through that plaza block, is going westbound or northbound, crossing through the block. So when we are pedestrianizing space, and I'm highlighting that in blue, one of the things that we have to understand is what's the relationship of that bike lane with the new pedestrian space, because it can cause conflicts between the pedestrians and the cyclists that will be speeding through the space, right? So that's one of the first challenges that we were looking at, is how do we retain that access, but also how do we reduce conflicts with pedestrians, specifically given the orientation of the bike lane that is adjacent to this block up here that has a lot of commercial activity on the ground floor, and then also an exit of the train, of public transit. So what we were looking at were like just pushing that bike lane down, right, against this curb here, and then maximizing the process that pedestrian space. So instead of being split in half, it can be continuous, and it can be properly programmed without having the cyclist speeding through. But then also what this new orientation does for us is that it introduces a series of chicanes in the space that they naturally slow down people riding. So it allows for a cyclist to safely make that journey without having pedestrians coming from everywhere. But also we're making sure that they are entering the block slowly. And then we're also reducing conflicts with the pedestrians, like pedestrians feel safer that way too. The other thing that you're going to see here is that we are proposing to establish a two-way bike connection here. So not only westbound, but also eastbound. And that way we allow for people that are coming from the Greenway to cross that block safely all the way to Broadway, and to connect to the two-way bike lane south of Dyckman if they want to. The other thing that by closing the street we were gaining is that the dedicated right turn bay on Broadway, the one up here, becomes null because cars can no longer enter that block. So what we did was to actually take advantage of that and then reclaim that corner here and narrow the crosswalks. So you are actually gaining more pedestrian space in that intersection, and at the same time, you're reducing opportunities for cars to park on the crosswalks, right? Because what we're doing is we're going to be hardening the edge here, so that way we no longer have the double parking that we can see today there. I mean, I saw it when I was there like the last time. So it's really taking that out. And so there's no opportunity for that. And then now let's look at Seaman Avenue. So in Seaman Avenue, we're going to do something similar. What you see is like just do some bump outs there to also narrow the crosswalks. So then also you have like that presence of pedestrians in Seaman. It's very obvious that the plaza is there. And then also you're narrowing the crosswalks and you're creating that extra space there in the intersection. So that's the concept. Those were the challenges. Those were the opportunities that we're reclaiming with this design. Now, this is how we took all of that and we packaged it into a street design. So again, this is like the pretty render of what I explained before. Same idea, two-way bike lane. The top leg is the one that's going west, The bottom leg is the one that is going east. What you're seeing here around the plaza is a series of heavy planters and granite blocks that are protecting the edges so no cars can enter the space. The same on this side here, happening the same thing. We have here a crosswalk. Is not there because pedestrians cannot cross this way at any point because they can, but because it just makes it very clear that this is a pedestrian priority zone and we want to have a safe place that people can cross in, you know, it's their right to be there, right? Like crosswalks just makes you feel like that's your space, right? So we introduced that there as well. We have some rumble strips at key points to indicate to cyclists to reduce their speed. We also have the chicane. So it's a geometry that forces you to go slower because you're not longer going straight. You have to take a curve. And we are planning to protect all the edges here with wave delineators to make sure that the cyclists can stay on their space and they don't like just accidentally enter the plaza, but also it's very easy it's harder for pedestrians to accidentally step on the bike lane. So that's another thing that we wanted to make sure that didn't happen. And then let's highlight, I'm gonna now highlight some of those ideas so you can see it here. The other thing is we are proposing bike parking here. It's open parking, it's for anyone with their personal bike so they can park it here and they can just enjoy the plaza. This is a share zone. So in the crosswalks here, there's an area where it's going to be a mixing zone. It's similar to what we do in greenways. So we have some wayfinding to make sure that pedestrians and cyclists expect to see each other in that intersection, and the same here. We are introducing some share ramps here for cyclists that are entering and going down that block here. And then I think the other thing that I haven't talked about is emergency vehicle access. So there are buildings on top of these restaurants, and there are restaurants in the bottom. Accidents can happen, fires can happen. So we always work with the fire department on a plan to make sure that if something like that happens, they can get in the plaza and provide service to the buildings. So this is just an indication of that space that we have to make sure is clear. You can have tables and chairs, but it has to be stuff that is movable so then they can enter the block and provide service to the businesses. But when the vehicle is not driving, this whole space here is plaza space where you can have tables and chairs. They can be moved for some programming in the space, and all of this will be the plaza, everything that you see here. These are the elements, the safety elements that I was describing for the bike lane. These are the wave delineators. They look like this. So if you're riding, it's harder for you to like just step through it and enter the plaza. But for pedestrians, they just have to step over one of the low peaks and then just get in. This is like a standard protected two-way bike lane design. This is what we're thinking. This is the chicane that I was describing, right? You have to like go like this, and so it slows down the bike. This is some of the wayfinding for the intersections where the cyclists and the pedestrians meet. And then also these are some rumble strips that are also used in bike lanes to indicate, to slow down the cyclists. This is an example of a plaza that will look very similar to Dyckman Plaza. So I just went out there and like got a few photos that I thought were representative of the project. So all of those ideas that I described before and you saw on the floor on the site plan, this is how it would look like there in Dyckman. So very similar, like the use of planters along the perimeter, changing the surface of the roadway into a lighter color, and then having all this movable seating all around so people can sit outside and enjoy the space. And this is HERALD Square, similar treatment, also different scale, but similar treatment. And this is also a space where there's a two-way bike lane that crosses through the plaza as well. So I thought it was an interesting project. Also, it's similar in that way to Dyckman. And then the other element of this project that I wanted to show to you today is one of the things that we have to do with all our plaza projects is to look at the intersections and make sure that they are performing at their best. So we work with our traffic engineers to do that and to make sure signal timing is working at its best. So the street closure doesn't make traffic worse around it. One of the things that we are exploring for this project is going beyond just signal design and signal timing and thinking about maybe changing a leg of a street adjacent to the project to be from one way to two way. So that way drivers have a way to reconnect them back with Dyckman Street. Right now, what you have on the ground is Seaman Avenue, north of Dyckman is two way, and then Seaman Avenue, south of Dyckman is one way. It's going south. So what we're proposing is to extend that two-way condition all the way to Riverside Drive. So that way you have more options as like someone driving to get around. And the way that we're proposing to do that is just like this. This is like the design that we're proposing for Seaman Avenue. In this picture, you're seeing both things. You're seeing the Plaza proposal and that Seaman Avenue conversion that we're proposing. And the design would require to remove parking against the outer, like the gas station here. There are a lot of curb cuts here. So we thought it was the loss of parking in this area would be minimal just because of all the curb cuts. So we're proposing to remove that few parking spots there, maintain the ones on the side against the community garden here, and then just create this a moving lane per direction, and also a bike share lane as part of it that goes south and north. So those are, it's a pretty straightforward design. We are right now working on traffic planning for it, and it's something that we think really enhances the Plaza project. So transportation planning, this is how it would, like traffic would work with the Plaza closure. Right now it's working like that because this location has been closed for over a year. But I just wanted to go over what it means long-term. So if we were to remove the open streets, it would be, cars could go through. With the Plaza proposal, we're completely eliminating vehicular access to the block. So no one can park there at night or during off time. It's just it's a plaza full time. With the two-way Seaman conversion, what you see is that now there is the opportunity to, if you cannot enter Seaman, Dyckman this way through that block, then you can go down Riverside and then come up and then enter that block. So it's like another way of getting around. Again, we think that they complement each other, but we really think that we can move forward with the Plaza proposal, not necessarily having to do that two-way conversion. So bike access, we already talked about this, but I just wanted to reiterate, like the larger vision for this proposal is to extend that two-way protected bike lane all the way to Seaman Avenue, closer to the greenway, closer to the water, and then curb regulations. So the Plaza project will only change the curb regulations within the block, right? So it would have an impact on the 2-hour meter parking right now on that block. But that's the only impact that would have on curb regulations. So we will make those to no standing at any time zone. So all of this will be no standing anytime, the same here. If we were to move forward with a two-way conversion of Seaman Avenue, which is this, then we would have to remove parking here. So this will become a no standing at any time. So we'll retain parking on this side, and that will be pretty much it. So everything that looks like a dashed line is like a change that we're making to the curb regulations. Okay, so wrapping up, next steps. So Dyckman Gardens has been very busy over the past couple of weeks, coming up with a programming plan for the summer. So it's going to still be an open street, but they have been coming up with a programming plan so they can get they're dipping their waters in the pond and trying to like understand how that looks like long term. So this is what right now the draft of what they're working on. They have a fitness program with a coach that they have been working on that would be started in July. I understand that they're going to be providing more information in a couple of weeks. They're also working on some art classes for children, also starting in July, and they have also been working with the Times Square Alliance on a programming to bring up some of the Broadway shows to Dyckman Street and have some of those free to the public happening on the open street. So that is the summer open street, right? Not Plaza yet, but just like open street. So the plan is this summer, that space will still be an open street. Then our goal is that in the fall, we move forward with the Plaza implementation. So we're going to be continuing during the summer to fine tune any necessary mitigations. We'll continue to do traffic analysis, specifically for Seaman Avenue. And then the open street will be having restaurant activity, but also public programming. And then our goal is that when September arrives, then we can move forward with the Plaza implementation of the Plaza once we have everything ready to go. And then we can, come back and also talk to you about that two-way conversion option of Seaman Avenue as we learn more about it. So we would love to get a resolution of support today for Dyckman Plaza. And yeah, happy to answer any questions you may have or clarify anything. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Irena. So just to clarify, the resolution you would look for tonight is with respect to the Plaza design, but not the two-way conversion on Seaman between Dyckman and Riverside, or both together?
I think you could do the Seaman without having had our full sign off on it, if that's something that you feel is important. It seems like
I guess when you say you're going to update us in September separately on that, then I'd rather just focus on the Plaza part tonight. But it's sort of, is there something that because you need that, right? But do you need, is there something, I guess what is that? Are you going to come and update us with more details about the two-way conversion? Is it not a definite thing? In which case, can we just deal with any resolution on that when you come back?
I think that would be fine. I think that we think it makes sense and that it looks like it will work. But we want to make sure that we have final sign off from engineers.
Yeah.
Before officially saying that we're going to move forward with it. So if you want to wait until we have that sign off, then that's fine. If you wanted to say that pending engineering, because it's important.
No, I'd rather just not mix the two things. Okay. They happen.
Yeah, I think that's why we kept them separate.
For not having anything to do with sort of support or not support. Okay, so a few things that I'm going to kick off. One, while I'm talking, if you wouldn't mind going to the slide about letters of support you got, that went by fast for a few of us, local electeds, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Just for anybody who might be new to one of these committee meetings, how we do it on TNT is I'm going to give an opportunity for the thank you. I'm going to give an opportunity for members of the Traffic and Transportation Committee to ask their questions, followed by board members. Other CB12 board members are here, and then I will go to the public. Everybody's got up to 2 minutes to say their piece. You get 1 more minute if part of that was a question to DOT for them to respond to your question, and then we move on. I would say, I guess one concern, thank you for his presentation, looks great. My only concern is that I don't know how many years ago it's been now that you redid that intersection at Dykeman and Broadway, which definitely cleaned up that intersection in large part. But the hard right turn and then the right turn onto Riverside as you're coming southbound on Broadway were never totally used as indicated. How the natural kind of flow went was the hard right turn was really a hard right turn plus a soft right onto Riverside. And then you had the middle lane, so to speak, going onto Riverside. So I am concerned that if you eliminate the hard right lane and there's so many people turning right to head to the highway, you know, just the analysis, sort of what does it indicate just in terms of volume and the risk for backups with that. And just for the record, the two-way in Seaman sort of looks like an interesting concept, and I'll look forward to hearing more because we do hear a lot of issues related to people coming off the highway at speed, and then you're only, you know, you got to turn at Henshaw or else you can't do anything to Broadway, and it's not always the safest thing as people like turn onto Henshaw, and Henshaw really can't handle much volume. So it could be an interesting way to sort of rebalance things by having an opportunity to turn and just go straight on to Seaman rather than all the hoochie hoo that you have to do right now. So with that, I'm just gonna go to the committee. Actually, if you could unshare the screen, it'll just make it a little easier for me to see hands. I'm gonna start with Omar Tejada.
I just want to say thank you to Irene for the presentation. It was very informative, appreciative. I do agree with the changes to Seaman Avenue because anyone who stood on that corner of the Plaza and Seaman Avenue and Dykeman can tell how much traffic there was because there was kind of only one way into that area. So creating a dual entry into that area alleviates traffic on Seaman and Cumming Street. So I think people that live on that block will appreciate some kind of alleviation in traffic congestion that's been occurring there. The question that I have is, how much parking is being lost by that conversion for that area?
Specifically for Seaman, you mean?
Yes.
So it's not as much as it looks like in the drawing, I think, because of the driveways, the curb cuts for the gas station.
Yeah.
But do you have the actual number?
Sorry, is that on Dykeman or Seaman?
It's on
No,
Seaman on the west
on
side of the
Seaman,
gas station.
yeah, alongside the gas station. I can't imagine there's more than two, but yeah,
So
because it is mostly curb cut, but
yeah, so my understanding is that it is 3 parking spots that are getting lost. Because I am looking at the curb cuts and then also at the areas where people shouldn't be parking. So it's really like a total of 3 to 4, depending on how wide, like long your vehicle is.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to compliment you on what you did with the bike lane design. It does mimic what happens on the Greenway, especially if anyone's taking the Greenway all the way downtown. Those intersections and those slow rivets happen near Chelsea Piers. Chelsea Piers has those installed and for the same reasons. So it does slow down traffic a lot. So kudos on that. Thank you.
thanks, Omar. Gerard, and then Leo.
I just had, good evening. Yeah, I'm all for the plaza, but I got just 2 points I want to make. Currently, anybody that drives in that 3 or 4 block radius can tell you how bad and how congested it is. It is an environmental disaster to the people that live adjacent to that area. So the traffic studies, which often really don't solve any of these problems, and as a matter of fact, it kind of makes a case where we do things that actually make it worse. And then we at the community board get to hear people come and really plead to and express how much their lives are being infected by this traffic. So I don't know what makes that better. This likely will make it worse. And the people in those areas are being heavily impacted by that. The only other comment that I had was, if this does have the desired effect, this would hopefully help the restaurants. My only point here is, eventually, if revenues increase for restaurants, which we hope it does, we are using public area that will likely at some point increase value to the landlords. Because invariably, if we have the desired effect and these restaurants do better, which we hope they do, the landlords eventually are going to raise a higher rent. So they're actually directly going to benefit at some point, hoping there is a recovery by, putting the tables out there. So I don't know if that really gets looked at, but the landlords should not benefit down the road by recovery, but they likely will if those restaurants actually increase revenue, because the next lease for those restaurants will be higher and the landlords will get it. So I don't know, is that considered somewhere in this mix? Those are my two comments. It's not really a DOT, but actually it does, there's an economic impact that landlords will benefit eventually.
So Gerard, you mean, to clarify for everybody, the commercial rents?
Oh yeah, those will go up. I mean, we hope the recovery happens, and let's assume it does, that this helps those businesses. Invariably on the next lease, the landlords will be like, well, you're making more. So they're going to raise their rents. So directly, landlords potentially stand to actually increase their revenue down the road on the next lease if the recovery occurs. We hope it does, but that'll happen. So
and the rent's not only for the landlords, but for the residents who live in those buildings.
So this is an impact of it. I just wanted to bring that up.
Just to clarify just to make sure it's clear, because I know it gets a little confusing, or we had a lot of conversations about it when we were out in the street, just that the long-term vision isn't that it would have as many tables out for the restaurants the way that it does now. So that's a sort of still a short-term emergency response situation. And then I think, sure, it's definitely possible that rents can go up, but we also want to be providing a neighborhood amenity. So it's a quality of life issue for the broader community as well, to benefit.
Yeah, I forgot. Thank you for that, Kimberly, because I forgot to mention that in terms of like long-term use of the plaza, the goal is that it will be a public plaza. So we're not going to be having the outdoor dining activity that we see right now. That's going to completely phase out by the end of the year anyway. I mean, that seems to be the goal, and that's like what we're doing for the specific space. So next year, if any of the restaurants wants to use the space in any way for commercial activities, they have to go through a concession agreement, and that is a longer process where it really limits what can happen in that space and where to a very small footprint. So it's not going to be what you're seeing on the street right now of having all that activity pouring into the plaza. Like it's happening right now, because that is a recovery program. Open streets at restaurants is a recovery program. It's not a permanent program.
Not to say that they won't benefit still from having a destination in the community and like a lot of active space, but it's a different kind of benefit.
All right, thank you, both Gerard and DOT. Leo, did you put your hand down?
Yes, good evening, Debbie. And again, thank you, Irene and Kimberly, for the presentation. My question had to do with the emergency vehicle access. When it came to the restaurants having their seating outside, it seems nearly impossible if it's an emergency and they have to get to the destination of the emergency within seconds for those restaurants to come in and pick up everything, move customers. So, but she answered it. If it's going to eventually phase out and the restaurants are not allowed to use it specifically for outdoor seating, I think it shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, that's correct. So we will have reduced capacity dining activity likely this fall, because if the recovery program is still active by then, we'll have some of it. It will be reduced capacity. So it means that you saw that FDNY lane that I highlighted, that has to be completely clean. We cannot have anything happening there. And then what's going to happen next year is like, we would have maybe sub-concession, maybe if they apply. They haven't really talked to us about it. So I don't know that it's a possibility for all our plazas, but that means that we're not going to have anything of what you're seeing today there. So there's going to be a clear FDNY access point at all times, so they can go in the space and provide service. So yeah, for sure.
I appreciate the clarification. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. Sally and then Barbara.
Yeah, I have a few questions. One, on the first slide, I think you said that the feedback in terms of utilization management was very positive. What was that feedback? What metrics did you use? I'm just trying to figure out how you decided that it was positive.
The feedback, Sally, sorry, would you clarify again, what part of the feedback on the utilization, like people using the space?
You had said that the reviews from the first summer, you got very positive feedback on utilization and management. And I'm just wondering what was measured?
Yeah,
and what the feedback was?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we heard from multiple people were that the space was properly maintained through the past year. So comments were specific to there wasn't any trash on the open street at any time. There was also all the planters with all the plants and the flowers that were well maintained, and people did like that. There were comments about them also blocking access to open street. So I don't want to minimize that because we did hear about it. But I think that we heard, there were positive reviews regarding maintenance, and that it's something that we like to hear from people, because at the end, the same entity that was maintaining the space will be maintaining the future space. So we need to understand if they have the capacity and ability to do that. So it was pretty much the planters were well watered at all times. Flowers were really pretty. People appreciate just having flowers in their community, and that the space itself always looked clean. There wasn't any trash. And it was hosed down with water hose every morning. So that those were the specific points.
Okay, because I also
Sally, I know you had more, so let's just, with the 3 minutes, let's keep it moving.
Okay, I also had questions because I know there were a fair amount of noise complaints, and so that sort of goes in the other direction. So I'm trying to figure out how that might be handled this summer. My other questions were in terms of getting back to the fire lanes for a second. That's a through street that also addresses fires throughout the community, and I'm wondering what happens there when it's closed off. If you demap the street, then there's not the through traffic to handle emergency vehicles heading to the highway and that kind of stuff. And then my last question was community support. I see that you've got the usual suspects on the list, but I don't see the community garden listed. And since that will be a major impact on that space, which has been maintained for the last 30 or so years, I'm wondering if there's been a conversation with the Ring Garden and what the results of that conversation were.
We're moving in on 3 minutes, so Irina, if you can just focus on clarifying on the FDNY access and the Ring Garden question.
Yeah, so the FDNY access is what we do with a lot, this is not an uncommon thing that happens in the city right now. We get blocks out of the grid all the time. What we do is we have a rigorous outreach process with the FDNY, where we basically work with the department and also with all the emergency vehicles that serve the area to make sure that they understand that that's not going to be part of the grid anymore. When you put something if you try to get an address with Google Maps to get to a place or Waze, it's not going to give you a route. That it will basically maximize the travel time, taking into account that space is not there anymore. So what we do is just making sure that all those emergency vehicles that could be impacted by that closure, they know exactly what that means and they can plan ahead. So again, this is not a document issue. It's happening all across the city. I presented recently a closure for Broadway, where we're closing a block of Broadway. So it's just something that those entities are getting really used to and becoming very much part of the process.
Over the for a year, right? So almost. So we haven't, that I know of, gotten complaints about that particular aspect for FDNY.
Yeah. No, we work with them closely. And then with the community, the Ring Garden, we invited them to be part of the workshops. We met a few people on the street from the community garden. They spoke with us. I think, Kimberly, you were the one who had, I think, the longest conversation with them about the space. You know, I feel like just generally speaking, they want to be part of the process. And they did have concerns, I believe were concerns, you know, about the quality of life concerns that we were hearing regarding noise and making sure that that is taken into account. All the concerns that we heard about noise were not specific to the Plaza block. A lot of them had to do with speeding, dirt bikes, and other things that were happening. What we are doing is making sure that those that are related to the Plaza can be properly addressed through this process.
Why don't we just, because we are a little over time on this one, let's move to Barbara. I'm not going to speak for Barbara. She's going to have some more on the garden, but let's move, and then we might sort of come back to some of these if anything is still open on that conversation. Barbara? Just unmute. There we go.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, I have a few points to make and ask. If you go to that slide that has the composition and the issue about the managing board for the Plaza space, I don't know if you can get to that quickly. Basically, the composition of the Dykeman Gardens, Inc. is composed entirely of the restaurants. And even in the earliest part of the process, we raised concerns about that. And it said that, look, you have all these arts and active groups in here. If it's to truly be a community managed space, it shouldn't be a restaurant operation. I, for example, spoke with Aaron Sims this afternoon, who is head of Inwood Arts, and he had authorized me to say that he would be more than glad to serve as a board member in any administrative capacity for the community programming for that space. He couldn't be at the meeting here tonight because he is running the initiative of the movies on the Hudson down at the Hudson tonight. And so no better reason than that to not be at tonight's meeting. The Ring Garden should also, a representative of the Ring Garden should also be included on that board. We have a 35-year history of running programming and activities in that area. I also suggest possibly, if they're interested, someone from the Pied Piper Children's Theater, someone from the Inwood Library, when we talk about children's events and reading aloud and such, a resident of the building that is directly above those restaurants should also be included for the concerns and programming and activities. Also, there's been no date put on this plaza. Community gardens are to operate from April 1st to October 15th. That's when we should be looking at programming there. After October 15th, and it starts to get cold, and when you're there in the winter, there's really not much happening except the Ring Garden has a holiday and menorah tree lighting, and we have some other little events there. But I think you have to talk about opening that space up for other things in a winter period. I think you have to see a sort of two-season concept there rather than just it's this, sort of infinite plaza. The other point that I make is, so the first point is clearly change and expand the composition of that board. The second is a two-season thing. The other is the bike lane. One must understand the bike lane is not only a neighborhood or New York thing, it is part of the Empire State Greenway to Albany. It is part of the East Coast Greenway to Maine. And so we have to look at impacts and thoughts on that. For example, there are major bike rallies that go through there, major sort of bike regattas, for lack of a better term, and so forth. This wraparound was first introduced tonight, Broadway, going around to Broadway. What will the effect be on Starbucks, the newsstand, the butcher shop? When you talk about that, you're maybe talking about killing businesses. Not so sure about that. I think that there should be some caveat in any resolution. So that's what I basically have to say. So I propose a friendly amendment that the board must be expanded to include community arts groups, the Ring Garden, and a community member from the buildings. I suggested she would do it, Nancy Preston from Moving Forward Unidos, who lives in that building. And also a question about that wraparound, its impact on the local businesses there stretching up Broadway some. That's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
All right, I think that exceeded the 3 minutes. Correct me if I'm wrong. I did want to say, actually, Barbara, I hadn't remembered to say this. The conclusion is that I think it would be a great idea if the Dykeman Gardens nonprofit also goes to Parks and Cultural Affairs, because I had the same thought, and Liz and that committee will be super helpful in like helping brainstorm all the partners like Inwood Artworks and, you know, Piper. And I mean,
yeah,
we are blessed with fantastic organizations doing great work, and there's just so many great resources, and I'm sure that would be like really helpful to you all to make all those connections. You probably have many of them already.
Yes, I'm on part.
But, and again, not to, and then maybe DOT can answer it, but my understanding is that's a nonprofit that formed and to put in an application for the DOT PLAZA program, but neither DOT nor us can sort of dictate what their board looks like, but that Ring Garden or Inwood Artworks, et cetera, can make that connection and sort of have that dialogue and, you know, and go forward. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong there, but I don't think it's for us to dictate. I think that has nothing to do with the city. It's a group that came together and applied, and they, you know, make the, you know, Victor's on the call.
But the DOT can say that this isn't representative of what the community is and what the Dykeman Garden should be doing, and make those, and really say, look, you know, expand this some. It's not, Dykeman Gardens is not 5 restaurants.
Well, but remember, everybody can apply for the SAPO permit. Once it's a plaza, everybody applies. You don't have to, they're not the only ones. But anyway, but now I'm doing it back and forth, which I know I'm not allowed to do. So, but DOT, have I said anything wrong there about sort of how to?
Right, and we can give quick answers to some of the other questions. I think on seasonality, I think we see this as a full-time public space. On bike events, I think this would be a great stop for anyone along the East Coast Greenway or Empire State Greenway. And then thirdly, and Irina can correct me if I'm wrong, but typically our pedestrian space, like on the corner by Starbucks, there is an extension, like extends into the crosswalk. So it's not really impacting the business in any negative way. It doesn't take any curb access. It actually just creates more space for pedestrians to be in that area, but it's already like would otherwise be the crosswalk, and instead it's painted space.
Oh, the crosswalk only.
Yes, yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move to Maggie Clark.
Hello. Thank you. A few points. As president of the Ring Garden and founder in 1984, we feel as if this has been presented as a fait accompli. We weren't involved in the beginning. Giving me a business card a month ago does not really constitute involvement. And it's clearly for the benefit of the restaurants. They were the ones that wanted to do this. The residents did not ask for this, okay? And as some people have said, it can adversely impact people who live in the area. So, you know, I'm just curious to know who decides why Ring was excluded. You know, we look at that and look askance at that. Also, since I can see that the fix is in and it's probably going to be approved because that's how these things are, you know, what happens if something goes wrong? Is there a way to revisit? You know, that something happened and we need to redesign something, bike accidents, whatever. You know, I had suggested a number of things. I took pictures of those pink items. And I'm not hearing, everything that I saw there. The idea of, median strips to protect, the bicyclists from other people, from other uses, and the same thing with the FDNY lane. Median strips that are planted permanently with evergreens and flowers would look very nice. Also, I wanted to mention on the other side of the triangle, the DOT a few years ago came in and just put in a whole bunch of parking on the Riverside side, which makes it hazardous for bike riders on Riverside because the cars headed towards the highway are ramping up their speed. There's very little room for the bike riders there. And it's because somebody at DOT, without asking us, just took away a good part of our sidewalk. So in the wintertime, you can't even walk there if there's been a snowstorm because it's so narrow and the snow piles up.
Sorry, can you explain that last bit again?
Okay, on Riverside, Riverside is the opposite side of the garden. DOT came and they took part of the sidewalk away. You'll see that the sidewalk has been indented for about 6 cars. And so all the hundreds of pedestrians that use that spot take it in the chin for 6 parking places.
All right, Kimberly, you might want to answer that. We're over 2 minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Going back to sort of the design issues and the potential to make changes, and also the addition of things like that are more permanent design elements like planted separations and those kinds of things. So this is a plaza that would be done in temporary materials, which yes, does give us the chance to see how it works, make design changes, see what doesn't work, and that's certainly happened in other places. And then the longer term vision would be to build it out in more permanent materials. And that one, we can incorporate things that we've learned. 2, we can do things like add real planters and those kinds of like in the ground changes. And 3, we can sometimes do like design. We can sometimes make different designs that are not possible with our temporary materials. So maybe people don't think that the bike lane is in the best place right now, but we're sort of limited by where the permanent curb lanes are right now. And if we can change the curb lines, then maybe that can change the design. So this would be a sort of interim treatment that allows us to monitor and make changes. And because it is signs and markings, and we are able to make like those kinds of tweaks too, if there is an issue, like you mentioned, of bike safety or someplace that's just not really working out, then we are able to come in and make adjustments.
Thank you.
And I do volunteer to be part of this board, should that be available.
Thanks, Maggie. Jennifer Bristol?
Sorry. Hey, just as a resident, I was at the last meeting and I believe DOT said, yes, this is the first time they're doing a plaza that will be for the public during the day and then go to the restaurants in the evening. And that to me, my takeaway was that was the way the plaza was going to be moving forward permanently, I guess seasonally. But then I guess, can someone clarify that that's not the case, that the restaurants will only have the space in the evening during this open streets or open restaurant situation for the recovery? So I'm a little confused.
Yes, that's correct, Jennifer. Sorry if that was not clear. Yeah, it would only be during the recovery time that would happen. However, I think that what we were trying to say, but I was not effective at saying that time, was that we have a sub-concession agreement that partners can apply to have commercial activities within plazas. They would have a very small footprint to do that. However, it's a possibility in the future that this happens here, as it could happen in any of our plazas. It's not exclusive to Diamond Street. So I think that, like, what I was trying to say is that for now, for this year, yes, that arrangement will likely happen. We already talked with the restaurants about reduced hours as well. But then in the future, it is fully public, so they would have to go through a very long process to just use part of the space for commercial activities. And if that happens, it will be sort of the arrangement like that too as well. Like it will happen during certain times, and then will be fully open public. But again, I don't want to highlight that because we don't have any agreement right now to do that. So
Right.
What we have
Well,
right now is like what happens this year, and next year is a public plaza open to everyone at all times, everywhere.
Well, I seriously ask the committee here to really think about this, because once you give something to people, like a business, that they're going to make money, they're going to want this space, and we should not be giving our public space to a business to make money. And I really want the committee to think about that, because it's going to be very hard to get that back. And we all know that those restaurants are very powerful within our community, and we all know the people that stood up for it. So I would really like the committee to think about the residents that live in the building, that live in the buildings that are catty corner to that area. And please just really think about the residents, not just the businesses here. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jennifer, for being here again on this. Deborah Cardona?
Good evening, everybody. I've got such mixed feelings. I'm all for the public space, but please don't tell me that the south side of the Herald Square Plaza works, because my attorney has his offices over there. And right now, and the way it's been for quite some time, it is not a pleasant place to be, unless maybe you're a tourist that doesn't care. Number one. Number two, how the Haven Plaza went down, that concerns me. Number three, Dyken was closed down to traffic long before the pandemic because of the insanity of La Marina. And we got used to it and shifting traffic around. Now I've got videotape that shows last summer with me riding my bike, looking at the way the plaza was during pandemic times when we were supposed to quarantine and be safe. And we still have the highest infection rate in all of the borough. But we'll get past that. This is an economic development thing. The fact that this past Christmas having a separate tree lighting and that you guys are dealing with the public versus actually handling traffic issues and don't have real studies like you didn't for Haven Plaza. And it concerns me because I do ride my bike. I wanted to go to a concert the other night up at over by the Indian Road Cafe. And I decided that it wasn't safe for me to ride my bike either on Broadway, because no matter what, I'd have to deal with that intersection, that area to get home to where I live in Washington Heights, which, by the way, you put down a city bike station without telling any of us over on 163rd Street, right? Because it was NYCHA property, even though there's no entrance to the tenants there. On top of that, to a road that takes you to a hill that, you know, it's like you're throwing stuff down where you feel. I don't think you've ever ridden a bike. I don't think you're pro bikes at all. But the motorcycles can have all the fun and the donuts and the fireworks. Let's remember, people were complaining about noise all along. So let's be respectful about what is being done here. It just concerns me. It concerns me how we're throwing it down. It's just not fair to the public, and you know very well, because you guys don't know what you're doing because you don't live it. And that's what bothers me. And then sell these pretty pictures and treat us like we're idiots when this conversation wouldn't go downtown. You wouldn't dare get away with this where I work. On the southern end of the district. It's not correct, and you know it. God help us with this next election. Good night, all.
All right, thanks,
Unmute.
Deborah. We have Okay, so, Omar, you didn't have one more thing, did you? That's an old hand, okay.
No, yeah, I'll put it down.
Okay, so, I'm gonna motion on a resolution, in support of the open plaza at Dykeman Street. Do I have a second for that on the committee?
I second the motion.
Okay. Oh, Richard Allman, you're here. I thought you were not going to be with us this evening. Greetings. Nice to have you.
I'm out of town, but that's a little easier to deal with in Zoom life than.
Yeah, true. Very true. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do a roll call on the committee first. Sorry, let me just get where I need to be. Mary Anderson,
Yes.
Bruce Robertson,
No.
excuse me, Omar Tejada,
Yes.
Jim Berlin,
Yes.
Jay Mazer,
Yes.
Leo Jimenez,
Yes.
Gerard Dingle,
Yes.
Richard Allman,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Sorry, I've got a cat eating my dinner. I'm going to go to CB12 members who've joined us tonight. Sally Fisher.
No.
Okay, and Barbara Frazier.
No.
Okay, and I don't know if this is going to work, but actually, okay, I'm going to ask because we have a lot of attendees and I want to reflect. I imagine some of you are going to want to vote on this. So what I think I'm going to do, let's see if it works, is all who support the resolution, I want you to lift your hand up now. You don't have to vote, but okay. So Leo, if you can just jot down that we have 5 yes hands: Dimitri, Katrina, Carolyn, Knock, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Marilyn. And
I took
now,
notes.
oh, sorry. So that was 3, 4, 5 hands.
I'll also,
and-
I'm sorry, Debbie. I'll also add Daniel Bonilla. He raised his hand in support of the
Oh.
resolution.
You're almost done?
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm like looking at the attendee list. Okay, now I want Dimitri, Katrina, Knock, Marilyn, Carolyn to put down your hands.
I'm almost done.
And then, because I want to capture those who are against, not in support of the resolution. Okay, so voting now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm counting 7. Deborah, did you want to vote, or did you want to not vote? Just put because right now we're just voting again, so I want to give you. Okay.
I'm against the resolution.
Okay.
You didn't amend it, correct? You didn't take the friendly amendment that Barbara offered?
No, I don't think I can. I can't dictate to Dykeman what their board composition is.
Well, then it's a definite no.
Okay.
Thank you
all
for
right, so,
asking me. Thank you.
No, I mean, you took the time to be here. You should have your vote reflected.
God bless you,
Deborah,
know, it's all with the
one,
best interest.
2, 3, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 against. Jennifer, I think I might have 9. Jennifer, Deborah, Ira, Marshall, Jay Wolf, Cassandra, Tiffany, Adam Fran, Dario Quinzak. Okay, did I say Deborah? 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, got it.
You missed me. Hello?
You didn't raise
Maggie?
your hand. 10,
No, it's
Maggie.
been up the entire time.
Okay, it's just
Right
not
next
visible
to my
on screen.
face.
I got you now, because it wasn't visible on my screen. I could take a screenshot, but I don't think we need to do that. So that's 10, including Maggie. Okay, all right. Thank you for everybody's engagement. I would, and I'm sorry, Victor, you had your hand up earlier. I do want to just remind you, it would definitely make some sense to visit the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee, who's chaired by Liz Ritter, to spend a little bit more time on the issues that were raised about connecting with many of the organizations that do cultural programming in the area and are fantastic. And that's it.
I have one question before they leave.
Yep.
So I have a suggestion, right now for that area, I think we're kind of hitting a critical mass where with the plaza, which I'm all for, but there's been so much going on in the 4 or 5 or 6 block area. I don't think that the community should even entertain any other suggestions from DOT without an environmental and a traffic study, not for 1 or 2 blocks, but for like a 5 or 6 block area. There's up through Seaman Avenue and that whole area on Dyckman Street. Just the people that live in that area deserve an environmental study and a traffic impact study for a 6 or 7 block. And I, for one, don't believe that the DOT should have any right to come here to talk about Seaman two-way or anything else until you come and speak to this community and say, we've taken your concerns, your health, noise, environment seriously enough to do an impact study and a traffic study, and we're not gonna propose anything without that.
George, just taking that point, I think that you make a good point about when we do spend more time on Seaman, just DOT, as you know, we are gonna, whether, without getting into the form, we are going to want to understand, what are the impacts of the changes that have been made over the years in that intersection, and look at, the Broadway corner as well, because it's a bugaboo that we make changes, we made the changes at Dyckman and Broadway some years ago, but we don't hear how the story turned out. So that could be an opportunity to spend more time on what the bigger picture there is. And I also want to say before we lose, Jennifer,
Deborah, I'd like to make a brief comment.
Okay, let me just finish. Is that there's just some stuff that's going to come up, old business, new business. And one thing I am going to want to talk about is that sort of as we look to the fall and our agenda in the fall, is that to date, we haven't spent time as a committee on the open restaurants program. There's also been a lot in the air about just sort of how we are using the curb space. And I do want to sort of have a plan to spend more time on that subject and sort of bring in some of the things that one of the attendees, Jennifer Bristol, raised tonight about just sort of how we're using and who's using and who gets to use it and all that stuff. All right, Barbara, really fast, because
Okay. I want to say in terms of that community programming, Green Garden for over 25 years has done art in the garden. And from our own community, we have drawn dancers from the Martha Graham dance
Barbara,
company that's
actually,
Inwood
no,
based.
we're actually,
Martha
we're
Brown.
done on this conversation, and I take your point, and I absolutely go forth. Go forth and
Okay,
program.
but I'm pointing out
And
that
make
the
the
steering
connection. The
committee,
connection's been
Deborah,
made.
let me finish for 20 seconds. The steering committee for the current group seems to be bringing people up from Times Square, people from outside the community. We have it within this community. We have Inwood Opera within this community and so forth. So, you know, let's do it within the community. Okay, that's my comment.
Yeah, so if you can also just make sure that we get connected with Liz and all that stuff, it'd be great. All right, so next up, I have a sort of amorphous item, which is DOT pre-summer update. And so Kimberly, I was hoping you could spend a few minutes on, you know, like there's various things that have come, obviously we've resolved on, or people, communities come to us on, things on Amsterdam Avenue, for example, and we kind of have like bits and pieces. So Kimberly and I were just sort of talking about if DOT could come, just kind of tell us what they've been working on, you know, things that they don't, not necessarily ready to come back to us, but you know, might have on tap for us in the fall. If there's any sort of loops that we can close now about items that were open. Besides Amsterdam, Kimberly, I will want to spend a little time also more formally on some stuff around 158th Street. I think we have a few people here who will want to talk about that. But what can you tell us about, you know, resolutions that we've done and things you're looking at but not ready to present on, but we can look to in the fall when we return?
There's been some interest in Amsterdam. We had a letter from Yeshiva and elected officials and other stakeholders in the fall, and also a very similar resolution from Community Board 12 about the northern stretch of Amsterdam up around 181st to 190th. We've also more recently received a letter from the borough president asking for, I think, speed bumps or with concerns about speeding and safety around PS 189, which is on Amsterdam at 188th and 99th, I believe. We've also had interest from I Challenge Myself, which is a group we've worked with in the past for safety improvements around on Amsterdam around George Washington High School, 192nd on Amsterdam, and we've also just generally heard complaints about speeding and drag racing in that area as well. So we have, we understand there's interest in that. It's also where the where the bridge lets out at 181st Street on Amsterdam, and there's been some interest in bike connections to the south. So there's a lot going on in that area, and our school safety team is interested in working with some of the schools up there. So that's something we hope to kick off in the fall. So I think to the extent that you guys have, you know, are able to kind of think through what's going on in that area and how we might be able to engage the community and how we might be able to make some changes for safer streets in that area, that would be great. And then I know there was also a lot of interest in Riverside, and I'm checking my notes from Lyle because he's not here tonight, but he did email me to let me know the requests on Riverside. There were a number of things that were asked for, including lighting requests, sidewalk inspections, the loading zones along Riverside in that narrow stretch, and speed bumps. And so we have all of our various units at DOT currently reviewing all of those requests, and by the fall we should be able to give some updates on that as well.
So in that instance, Kimberly, you're referring to the upper roadway, all those photos and the issue. Actually, Chanel, if you're still around and can just promote Jody Herson from the attendee list for a moment, that would be great. Okay, so you guys are looking at sort of, I know, yes, the residents had consolidated a list of things that they were hoping to get looked at as you enunciated. So that's good to know that you are working on that. I think one thing that I just wanted some clarification on was that I hadn't really focused that that also included all the way up to 165th. And I know the hospital as well has asked for um, for some help in that area as well. Jody, can you just take a moment and describe, because I understood what, everything you had presented about the upper roadway, but I just wanted to understand the 165th, you were talking about the intersection at Riverside. Sorry, I just need to hands. Okay. Jody, are you still hanging out? All right. I don't know if she stepped away for a moment or maybe she's having a hard time getting unmuted. But so Kimberly, if we have, while we won't be meeting over the summer, I just may ask, if there's sort of developments or anything transpiring about that upper roadway section that maybe, could keep you guys connected directly, or Jody and Lyle connected directly.
Yeah, keep both Lyle and me in the loop. And then I believe at the 165th area, I believe our pedestrian group was looking in that area for a while, because that's close to, remember the ramps project? That was kind of a longer term project because of some funding. So I think we're looking in that area. And so
it was me living on 163rd to 165th Street. Is that correct? Is that what, because I was referring to that earlier. That is a very dangerous stretch of road. And going up that hill, it really makes no sense because the bike lane is on Fort Washington Avenue. And I'm begging you, for the safety of everybody, that you move that bike station up to Fort Washington Avenue. There's space in 99 Fort Washington on the front side that will allow the bike to go straight onto the bike lane versus going around into the worst intersection of the neighborhood. That's really bad road.
Actually, let me break in here. I think, Deborah, there was an issue that the hospital and I think the Upper Riverside people were asking about the actual intersection at 165th, but Deborah brings up a very important point. Kimberly, when do you think DOT can come back and give us real numbers on the city bike rollout and like station utilization and all of that? And then, like opportunity for things like Deborah's saying, like issues where we might think that there's an issue or, a station, blue.
Again, for the safety, there's plenty of
Deborah, sorry. No.
I'm sorry. I'm out.
That's okay. I appreciate the reminder because I totally would have forgotten. Kimberly?
I would have to check with Jennifer and other folks in our office. I imagine at some point in the fall, but I don't want to speak on their behalf. But if please feel free to keep sending us comments.
My usual request to put it on the record is we're always eager for utilization. I understand that there's this like massive raw data thing. I'm very good with data. I am not scared of spreadsheets. I don't know how to deal with that. We really, 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 really want in the fall to have a detailed presentation now that all of CB12 is rolled out. And just so people know, as I don't know if it's happened yet, and maybe Deborah has some information from the ground, but I had asked that 160 roadbed station at 169th find a home that didn't take up an entire block of parking because there's so much room around there with the plaza, et cetera. And DOT had identified an opportunity in what is currently a no standing zone that could take the roadbed station. So as far as I know, that 169th Street roadbed station will be on the move, and those will be returned, that block will be returned to parking. And just one more thing on 158th Street, Bruce Robertson, do we have Peter Green here to talk about
No, I
that
don't see
issue?
him.
Okay.
I don't see him.
Okay. Okay. So, but let's, again, we don't necessarily need a meeting to do that. I think there were some concerns with the efforts relative to fighting against the demolition of 857 Broadway, Riverside Drive, and
Right.
again, a tall building. And so there was a request from that group for a traffic study, and we'd said the traffic study would accompany any development. But I think there might be an opportunity, because DOT had been there so intensively with traffic studies for the last like 2 years leading up to implementation of the pedestrian safety changes in the 157th, 158th area, that maybe we can get into that study. We may just ask DOT for some information out of that study, since I imagine there was a lot of work done in the not too distant past.
Right. And the issue is a 12-story building goes up in the middle of that block. What's it going to mean in terms of traffic? And it's going to be hell.
Right. But the study would be part of that land use process. It's not.
It actually is, because DOT owns that median strip, the hill, when we thought Parks did. So in terms of the developer being able to build taller because the street is wider than we originally had thought it was. But yeah, we can deal with this later when Peter's tuned into the whole thing in more detail than I am. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I appreciate you providing that bridge of just linking it all together with land use and DOT. So keep us posted. And if we need to do, again, if we need to do anything over the summer, just let me know. Okay. I think. Okay. So now coming back to sort of new business. Bruce, do you know if Mr. Westlottie is here?
I don't see him either, but I can say a few things. Basically, he's getting harassed by a whole bunch of agencies, including DOT, about his restaurant open space in front of his building, and he just wanted to see who he could speak with. He's been trying to get a hold of Lyle for a couple of weeks now, and Lyle's been MIA. So I can provide a contact for Highton at Tazo Restaurant, which is Morgan Place. And I really appreciate it, because he's my neighbor and my friend, and I frequent his restaurant, and he's really going through a tough time. So can I have him contact you, Kimberly?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. And, with that, I guess just in thinking about next year and sort of priorities for the committee, I felt for a long time that the open restaurants plan, while it resided with DOT, it was sort of like a whole community board issue. It's like, so, it might sit with one agency, but the issues span, for a restaurant, many more entities in addition to DOT. But I do think that when we think about it in the context of all we have heard from the community about how you ration the scarce resource that is curb space in this city, that I'd like to have an opportunity for this committee to really, people feel strongly on this. And anytime when you have a scarce resource, no one gets all that they want. But it's sort of come up with City Bike. It doesn't tend to come up with restaurants, but they're now in the street as well. There, likely will be, and happily will be, potentially some new ways that we envision things, that the city will envision things with policy towards, restaurants, operating in the streets, and maybe not as restrictive Sorry, I'm having like a cat and dog like drag out fight next to me and I'm hoping nobody dies. But I think it's time to sort of like look at, give people an opportunity to speak on all, on all the aspects of sort of what's happening at our curbs, many of which are things that we want to be happening with the free curb space. But it's something people feel strongly. So I was interested to hear from Mr. Westlotty, and, as just like an intro to us thinking about, like, people have been generally supportive of the restaurants operating in the roadbed, but at the end of the day, it's made a tense situation with cars losing parking spots and pointing fingers, it's, and saying like, oh, it's all on City Bike, but it's everything, right? Everybody wants the curb space. So, I mean, in some time in the fall, I'd like to spend some more time on all of it, the open restaurants, and just generally, and Leo Jimenez, actually, I should say, has been doing a lot of thinking and researching on issues of like residential parking and what happened to all, what used to exist, like municipal parking. And we weren't quite ready to present it at tonight's meeting, but again, all those things are sort of driving to, hopefully by September or October, we can have like a more meaningful discussion about things like policies like residential parking and that piece of it as well. So with that, sorry, I had a hand, one hand that I hadn't called on, Jeremy Eagle. Did you have something? You would just need to unmute yourself. Hi. Yep.
Can I bring up some issues that haven't been discussed at all tonight? I've never attended one of your traffic committee meetings.
I will give you 2 minutes to tell us what's on your mind.
Fantastic. I live on Cooper Street, right next to Good Shepherd Church and Isham Street. And as traffic enforcement is non-existent now in our community, I thought maybe it would be possible to ask the committee to consider placing more speed bumps. I don't know if this has been raised before. As I said, it's my first time attending. But some way that we can take back control of the speeding and the reckless abandonment of use of our streets now. That's one thing that I'd like to ask about, how I can propose specific concept that way. And also the school across the street, the Good Shepherd, formerly the Good Shepherd School, now currently there are 3 different programs in the former Good Shepherd School building. You allowed some parking spaces to be taken away for school buses. That makes a lot of sense, but the school buses haven't used that space. They just come, they idle in the middle of the block, waiting for students to either be taken out of the bus or brought out of the school to be brought into the bus. So I see my time is almost up. But anyway, I'd like to find out how I can address concerns about the use of that bus parking space and the noise and danger level on my street, Cooper Street, because of all of the recent changes. Thank you.
So the short answer is anybody can sort of request from DOT, and there's a link on their site, which we can try to get to you also, to sort of suggest a location for a speed. Apparently there are no more speed bumps in the world. There are only speed humps, but to suggest a location for a speed hump, and they will look at it, and DOT can certainly correct me if that's the wrong indication. Traffic enforcement issues are not this committee, it's public safety. So NYPD, the sort of there's precinct bad, crime stuff, and then traffic enforcement is its like own thing. So they can't really speak, and this committee can't address what are for better or for worse traffic enforcement issues. But certainly, as the neighborhood has been dealing with like the noise related to high speeds, we have felt a little limited, but the speed hump is there. There's a lot of criteria of when you can and can't use one. For example, you can't use one on a bus route, et cetera, but it could be where you're talking about, maybe it's possible. Kimberly, the bus and the idling and the no standing, is that an enforcement? Like, whose issue is that? And you're on mute.
Isn't that MTA?
Well, you said school buses, right?
School buses. Like idling, they're not supposed to idle, right?
No.
But who enforces that?
I think that might, sorry, Debbie, it's Lee. I think that might be a concern you have to directly with the school. Maybe.
I've done that.
And what has been the response?
They said that they've asked the bus drivers to turn the engine off, but they don't do it. It's illegal, but of course, the police are non-existent in this neighborhood. And so really, I think we just have to do things to make more sense of patterns of movement and use of the streets that would make them more peaceful than they are now on our own. And so you're saying that the only way that I can request a traffic hump is by going to the...
This discussion is out of order, Debbie.
Yeah, no, I know. Sorry, Jeremy, that's on me. I'm got a little too much back and forth going. So we will get you the information on where it used to be you had to come through us. But you don't have to come through us. You can just make the request directly. And they will take a look at it. It takes a little while, but they will look at it.
Just a quick note on idling is you can file a complaint through 311. I believe it's DEP that actually enforces.
That actually has a logic.
I've done that several hundred times already.
Okay. Okay. I think we need to wrap that up there. Thank you for coming to our meeting. I'm sorry we couldn't address as many things directly. Kimberly, one more thing that I've been communicating with Lyle about that I just remembered based on a presentation at this committee months and months ago is that when the charter school that's opening up by 215th Street or up there, we had discussed at that meeting that, the 218th Street stairs from Broadway up to Park Terrace East, that's a street technically, right? And when you get to the top, there's no stop sign. So there's no control in that intersection. It's like a free for all. So I think as part of that conversation, particularly with the school going in nearby and people potentially coming up the street, I think Lyle had taken back the sort of like, shouldn't there be a stop sign there? Like, so basically it's an intersection with no crosswalk, no nothing, but that's a street, right? It's a step street. And then you land on 218th as your pedestrian self, and you're just walking into moving traffic that has no reason to stop because there's no crosswalk and there's no stop sign. So it's been months. I haven't heard what happened to that, but like that school is opening. So we need to like understand what's happening with that intersection. I'm really actually concerned. I'm like legitimately concerned, even knowing about it without a school, but particularly with the school arriving shortly. All right.
Look into it.
So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I had other new business. Sorry.
Okay, Sally?
Yeah, just to follow up on your comment, I think it's 215th Street, not 218th Street, where the Step Street narrows out. But
Oh,
I know
yeah,
that
I'm sure you're, yeah.
the
Sorry.
community had also asked that there be some sort of traffic planning, given that we know that that's going to be chaos. And DOT said they couldn't study anything in advance, but they need to be prepared when that school opens to address what will be a nightmare in traffic. And then my other comment is the mayor announced another on during street week on the 11th, announced another 30 miles of protected bike lanes. And it seems like anything having to do with biking never comes to our community. And I'm wondering how we get on the list when stuff like that happens, that our bikers can actually be considered. So I would like the DOT to sort of report on where they are with bike lanes in Community District 12, maybe come back in the fall and tell us what the long-term plan is, because people want to be connected to the Greenway. They want to have protected bike lanes.
Sally,
and it seems
Sally.
like it doesn't make it to our community.
Sally, we had a whole session with the DOT bike person and talked about these issues, and we're the committee and I'm the chair. And so I'll give them direction of what we want and what we don't want. And agreed, it wasn't clear at the time that necessarily like bike infrastructure, like what those announcements, how many miles or yards are ending up in CB12. So I do take the point that it's something that we will definitely need to keep following and tracking
Great.
next
Thanks.
fall.
Okay,
George,
thank
is
you.
that a new hand? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had one. It was a city bike comment and maybe new business for next season, Deb. I really think the committee should seriously pursue conversation with city bike. I run all of Washington Heights and Inwood all the time, and I cannot tell you how many city bike kiosks I run by that have no bikes in. They have no skin in the game. They've come into our community and they've taken parking spots. The least they owe this community when they took our spots is to have a penalty if they don't keep bikes in the kiosks. Okay,
So that's old business. It's something that you are correct. We do need to be following up on. I do follow up. It is Lyft. It's not DOT.
Lyft, I'm
but
sorry.
I think I agree with you that we might need to stop going through DOT on this, and we might need to ask DOT to get Lyft. And it's a big issue, just given where we sit topographically and distance from the urban core. And I think it's gonna be our ongoing issue up here. Bruce?
No, I just wanted to make a motion to adjourn.
Can
I ask just one more question?
Jeremy, let me drop my email into you, and then, because I want to be, let's.
There's
talk
a
through it.
motion to adjourn, so basically
I'll
no
second.
one can ask a question.
Second.
I listed a bunch of questions in the chat. I don't think anyone.
Right, but there was
Oh,
a motion
God.
to adjourn, and now we're gonna adjourn unless we
I
vote against
understand
it.
that, Jim, but I'm making a point.
This meeting.
I
is
understand
adjourned.
that
And then, sorry, I've done a lousy job on the chat. Chanel, if you can just make sure that I get that, and I will follow up subsequently.
Yeah, I just added my email in response to your question.
Thank you.
Okay. And then how do I, okay. The meeting is adjourned, and Chanel, can you just tell me how I can capture Mr. Eagle's email address?
Can you hear me?
Take a screenshot.
I can tell you if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
It's my name, Jeremy Eagle,
Mhm.
JEREMYEAGLE @hotmail.com. I'm an old guy.
Yeah, look, it could be worse. It could be AOL.
That's it. My brother still has his.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the committee so much, and all the public. And this has been a great year for having so much, easier for people to attend meetings. Kimberly, thanks to you and your team for sticking with us through this year. But I do appreciate everybody's hard work. on many long meetings that we've had this year, and I look forward to kicking off a new season in the fall. And obviously, you know where to find me though for contact during the break. So thanks again to everybody for being here.
Have a great summer.
All right, you too. Good night.
Debbie, was there a final vote on Dykeman? I think we heard what it was.
Yeah, I'll put it in an email. Just need to add it up.
I hope you added my yes.
Sorry?
Daniel.
Hey,
I hope you
Daniel.
added I hope you added my yes. I raised my hand for yes. I don't know if you got that one.
Oh, yeah, let me add it because I think because you were on the panelists, I could have missed it. All right. Thanks, Daniel. Nice to see your face.
Same here. Take care. Bye.
All right. Kimberly, if you want to just stick with me for 1 sec. On the committee, we had 1 no and 1, 2. Oh, okay. She dropped. All right, I'm going to drop off.